Hello, everyone. This is Prantik from RevSportz, and very excited to have so many interesting and renowned guests from various aspects of the sports industry to discuss a very important topic: mental health. For the sporting ecosystem for our athletes. And I'll start with Mr. Abhinav Bindra. The man needs no introduction, but he's just been conferred the prestigious Olympic order at Paris. He was the man who's won the first individual gold for India at the Beijing 2008 Games. And more importantly, he's the founder of the Abhinav Bindra Foundation and has been an institution. And in terms of the work done, it's incredible what Abhinav you have been doing for the sports ecosystem. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Priyanka Prabhakar, a renowned sports psychologist who's done a lot of work with the Sports Authority of India and has helped the many athletes, including the Indian men's and women's hockey team that represented in 2016 and 2020 Olympics. We have Boria Majumdar, the founder and editor-in-chief at RevSportz, and last but not the least, Amrut Joshi from Gamechanger Law Advisors. Amrut, thank you so much for joining us and for sponsoring this particular episode. It's been a wonderful journey for us to partner with you. And just in time, we have Mr. Rahul Todi from Saatchi Group, who is obviously very well known in the sporting industry. Hello, Rahul. Hopefully you can hear us. That's Rahul for us. He's also obviously involved on the Mohammedan Sporting Club as well. So it's fantastic panel that we have here from people from different walks of life, very passionate about sports. And today we're going to be discussing about mental health, about the mental health code, as well as what is happening when it comes to mental health in the Indian sporting ecosystem. Abhinav, I'll start with you. You've been an athlete at the highest level. You've also been doing so much work post your competitive career. A very simple question, but perhaps for everyone watching, what is mental health according to you? And, especially in this sporting context for our athletes, how do you sort of look at mental health and how important is it for our athletes and our sporting teams?
Firstly, I think the simple things in life and simple questions are probably the hardest to answer. So it's not an easy one to answer. But I think for me, mental health is all about having a degree of balance in one's life. I think that has a very important role to play. I think in sport specifically, I think most ecosystems in sport are just about coming to terms with what mental health is and are trying to differentiate between mental performance and mental health. Because for far too long, I think their focus has primarily been on mental performance and the sports psychology aspect of it. And I think systems across the world have learned, we've looked at the individual simply as an athlete and forgotten that the athlete, before being an athlete, is a human being. And I think we're coming to terms with that. I think there have been in the past decade or so, there have been many issues which have highlighted. It's been something which has been very stigmatized. But I think over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, there's a lot of work that has happened on a global level to try and destigmatize the issue of mental health and to really bring it focus to talk openly about it, but also build adequate resources to start dealing with it. There are two aspects again here to mental health. One is an aspect of mental health, which is, in case an athlete is going through a certain issue or mental health issues or symptoms or a disorder, how do you deal with that issue? That is one aspect of it. But I think even more important is the aspect of prevention of mental health issues. And for that, I think there is a long way to go globally, but more so if we talk specifically about India. We need a more nuanced understanding of simply the human mind. We need a more nuanced understanding of sport and just an understanding that, this is a human endeavor. There will be failure, there will be some success, but most importantly, it is a human endeavor, and just to humanize each aspect of preparation of the ecosystem of the sporting environment, I think is very, very critical. It is essential to make human well-being at the heart and center of performance. And it is even more essential, specifically if you talk about India, to create a psychologically safe environment for athletes to compete in and train in. And for that to happen, there is a long, long way to go. It comes from advocacy, it comes from education, and of course, it comes from interventions that you make, not just for elite athletes, but start those interventions at the grassroots level itself.
Fantastic. I mean, I love the concept and notion of humanizing performance and making it about the athlete. Boria, question to you. From a media lens, has the media humanized the sporting performance? Is the media also guilty of creating the pressure, or has the media played a role? You have covered Olympics, Paralympics for the longest time. Your take on media's role on sort of humanizing athletes and performance?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. And we only celebrate winners in India. And that has been the case traditionally, and that kind of continues. In fact, Abhinav and I, in fact, Rahul and I as well, we were talking about post-Olympic and post-Paralympic stress. Now, you tell me, 29 medals, what about the rest who came fourth? In the Olympics, we had 6 or 7 fourth place finishes. Yesterday, Neeraj Chopra mentioned about the fourth place finishes in Panipat. In a university address. Unfortunately, in India, we don't. We only celebrate the medal winners. We keep going and giving them money. We don't go beyond the surface. How much have you and I, or in the media domain, in the discourse, discussed about post-Olympic or Paralympic stress? What about that fourth place finisher when he's actually seeing someone come third, earn 5 crores or 6 crore rupees, when he or she comes from a background of underprivilege? How does one deal with that? Not simply the money bit, the psychological aspect, the mental aspect. I don't think the media has played an active role. With your permission, if I can actually ask that question of both Rahul and Abhinav, for 2 reasons. Rahul, because from the corporate standpoint, he's investing and supporting the Paralympic movement, not just for the cause of the medal, but rather the movement. And Abhinav, because he's been there and done that for both. He's seen the high in Beijing. He's seen the low in Rio. I mean, I'm not taking London into account because London was not, I mean, the reason Rio is because he lost by 0.1. So he was almost there. And how was that trauma to deal with? So post-Olympic stress is something I want to address strongly in this. Rahul, if I can come to you, how do you address the humanizing of this thing, that the mental health challenges that Abhinav speaks about, before I go to Abhinav directly on how to address post-Olympic and Paralympic trauma, before Amrut and Prantik take over again?
Look, I think as far as personally goes, mental health is an issue, not even in sports, but in business. And honestly, as businessmen, or as entrepreneurs, when you're responsible for a lot of people, you see a lot of things going around you. When you've done it for a long time, you realize that the impact those kind of things have on people's lives. I mean, your personal success, or anything, or dealing with any situation. So it is a tough situation. Look, I mean, I don't really want to comment on the media, but I mean, in life, in everything, there is somebody who needs to start something, and I think the beginning is there, and these issues, I mean, these issues are there for a champion like Abhinav Bhai sitting on the panel. Boria, even for you, these issues have come up in the past, and even for me. So, I mean, the best thing is to look forward, be positive, and keep doing more. I mean, we can always sit down and say, wasn't done, could have been done. Yes, but let's start now.
Abhinav, directly Olympic and Paralympic stress. How, where, what role can we play?
I think, you mentioned a little bit in your comments about fourth place finishes and failure and this, that, and the other. You also have to understand that post-Olympic stress can also happen to individuals who win gold medals, by the way. And that is a very known phenomena. For me personally, my most difficult moment in my Olympic career came when I actually succeeded. So dealing with, there is such a long journey that an athlete has, working for that one moment. And then from one moment to the other, that moment has just passed and gone by. So it does create a void. It does create a degree of stress and stuff like that. So I think how do you deal with it? I think there has to be a clear plan on what athletes do after it. I think sporting ecosystems, support staff, etc., the entourage of the athlete needs to also get, mature and evolve themselves with requisite knowledge that, their job doesn't stop once the athlete's competition is over on the field of play at the Olympic Games. It continues. And then, you have to handhold your athletes right after, because that moments are critical. We've lost a lot of talent. If you look back to a lot of sports, especially my sport, we've lost a lot of talent after athletes have failed in a particular Olympics, and there is a reason for it, because they are lost. They don't really know how to handle that situation. There is, of course, mental stress. There is also physical stress, because you've put in a lot of effort, and then there's also, you add that up with inadequate recovery. You simply can't think straight, and you don't have the right. You don't perceive things well enough to make the right calls and make the right decisions. So I think the issue needs to be dealt with in many ways. It again starts with education. It starts with empowering not just the athlete, but the people who surround the athletes, to sanitize them with the knowledge and the tools required to understand the subject of what post-Olympic stress is about, and how do you deal with it, I think is very important. Just to finish, I mean, you talked about a little bit about the role of the media, etc. But I think we are looking at a bigger societal issue here, and sport is something which is part and parcel of society. As a country, as Indians, as a nation, we don't rank very highly on the happiness index of the world. And there are many reasons to it, but one of the reasons to it is our extreme attachment to outcomes. And perhaps we need to start thinking differently. We need to imbibe a different way of thought process amongst our youth, specifically, to find joy in effort, to savor the journey, and again, right from the start, build balance in life. To me, if you ask specifically about athletes, I think athletes on the whole globally are very guilty of not leading balanced lives. I didn't myself, and I erred there to a great degree. But specifically in India, I feel that there is even less balance, because all the eggs are in one basket. The self-worth of an Indian athlete is completely dependent on where his or her name appears on the ranking list of a sporting competition. And that's just fundamentally wrong.
Thank you, Abhinav. Priyanka, I'm going to come to you, and Amrut, thereafter I'll get to you regarding certain recommendations from the mental health action plan that's been laid out. Priyanka, you've obviously worked with a lot of the athletes. We tend to very loosely use terms like mental health, or interchangeably use terms like anxiety, depression, etc. Abhinav spoke about humanizing sport, about education. Tell us about your experience. How do athletes come from different nooks and corners of India? How do you sort of talk to them about something as nuanced as mental health?
I would say that, I think Abhinav has mentioned a lot of things when it comes to mental health, and he was really vulnerable, in talking about his own experiences. And I think that is something that is somewhere missing when it comes to the sporting ecosystem, because when we look at sport, it's very like, you have to be aggressive, you have to be a go-getter. And suddenly we're bringing in this vulnerable aspect, that becomes extremely challenging for athletes at multiple levels, be it the grassroots levels, because somewhere there is a particular personality that we expect from athletes. But here we are bringing in this very soft and vulnerable aspect to it. And I think athletes understand when we teach them in the right way, that they know that their bodies and mind is equally important. Their emotions have to be taken care of. How they actually spend every single day becomes important. So I think awareness is the key, to managing all the challenges. And I think this has come in today's discussion when it comes to the stigma that is faced. And I feel that as a country, we have stigma at as a country, we have stigma when it comes to mental health, discussing about it at the organizational level, we have it at, the team level, and also at the individual level. Even when athletes are feeling certain things that they're not okay, there is a hesitation to reach out even when the support is available. So I feel that, it's important to educate, because a lot of our athletes may not come from, the urban backgrounds. They come from very small towns, rural backgrounds. And for them to make them understand that it's okay to feel what you're feeling is the most important lesson, I guess, that we have to take.
And if I may,
fair enough.
Please. I think you made a very valid point, and the answer to that is a lack of trust. A lack of trust in the ecosystem. Do you think every athlete has the trust to go up to the federation boss or to their head coach and say, I'm feeling depressed? Probably not. And that is what I said a few minutes ago. It is so very important to set psychologically safe environments to train and compete in sport, and that requires a lot of sensitivity of the human endeavor, of the human side of sport. We have to move away from how our relationship with sport has been in this country. Our relationship with sport has been very, very transactional in nature. Transactional in the sense, hey, we will spend some money, we want your medal, we want them to win medals. Unfortunately, sport doesn't work that way. It's not a vending machine. You put in the coins and pop come the medals. It doesn't work.
Absolutely. Amrut, coming to you as a lawyer who's worked in the sports industry for so long, the IOC has laid out the mental health action plan in 23. The report clearly cites that a good 1/3 of the athletes that they had surveyed, elite athletes, they've all gone through various aspects of, mental health. Tell us, about some of the recommendations laid out. What are certain things that the Indian sporting ecosystem should look at when it comes to the, the guidelines laid out by the IOC?
Yeah. Thanks, Prantik. I think, on the symptoms of the larger problem of recognition of mental health itself, when you read the Mental Health Action Plan, the 2023 Action Plan, it is quite clear that at least at the highest level of sport, at Olympic sport, IOC, their Medicine and Scientific Commission has actually put this action plan together. So it goes beyond just talking about, hey, is there an issue of mental health? So that, I think that's it's quite refreshing to read a document that is based on research and evidence that the Scientific and Medicine Commission has conducted itself. And so based on that, a lot of the points that Abhinav, Rahul, Priyanka, etc. had earlier mentioned, and Boria as well had mentioned in this conversation, it starts by recognizing the fact that athletes need to have a psychologically safe working environment. And all the issues that they touched upon, what were the reasons for them to not open up if they have a mental health challenge? The fear of being removed from a team or not being selected in a team, right? Hypermasculinity. These have all been recognized clearly in this particular document. And in terms of action plan, they've listed out specific actions that Olympic committees, international federations, and sports federations, national sports federations can take between now they actually have I think timelines within which they will be checking on the implementation of the action plan. So for example, in fact, I'd be curious to know from everyone here who was at Paris as well. They did say that they wanted to create a zone within the Olympics village where athletes could reach out and seek access to mental health expertise. Now, just as a, anecdotally, because all of you were there, did you actually see something like this taking, being accessed by athletes, and more so by Indian athletes as well? So this could be one, one action plan that I'm just keen to know, what was the level of access to mental health expertise within the Indian contingent at both the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games? Because these are, and just as a lawyer, why I'm also keen to know this as well is because one, there is a constitutional right, of right to life, and right to health has been read within the broader discourse of, of right to life as well. And now there is also a statutorily recognized right in India for under the Mental Health Care Act 2017 as well, which mandates that, every person, irrespective of their backgrounds, has a right to mental health access. And for people living below the poverty line, the government has been mandated to provide access free of cost. So I'll pause here. There is a framework. The question is, how many people are aware of it? And two, is that framework actually being implemented? For, I think that's something that I'd be curious to know.
Abhinav Boria, please, Boria, go ahead.
To athletes about exactly both Olympic and Paralympic, and a lot of them actually came up and said that this is available, and there is this possibility of kind of going, and this helps out. I don't want to name specific athletes because I have not spoken to them before naming them, but I know a couple of our badminton players, for example, they went Olympic and Paralympic. And this was one of the things that they recognized is important. I actually remember saying to them that, look, it's okay to be not okay. It's okay to fail. It is fine. These are fundamentals that all of us have been through. Do you guys recognize this? The thing that Abhinav said, that it is not simply a transactional exercise. I'll give you one example. Sindhu had just lost her quarterfinal or pre-quarterfinal match. She had come to the mixed zone, and the first question she was asked was, you have lost here, are you winning gold in LA? And all of us were bombed. Said, what is this? Where did this come from? Similarly to Lakshya Sen, what did Victor Axelsen do better that you lost? I think there is a whole fundamental disconnect here between us, the media, and there are certain things that we don't take into account. Today, I might not write my best piece. Today, Rahul might not be in his zone to be able to deliver his best for his athlete. Abhinav might just not perform. Amrut might not have his best day legally. Priyanka might not have her best session. Prantik might not be in a position to write the best commentary. I think for our athletes, we need to take that into account, that it's okay to be not okay. But specifically to Amrut, yes, people, both Paralympians and Olympians, mentioned this to me, and a lot of them used this as well. Rahul, just to ask you, you were there in the Paralympic village. You interacted with a lot of these athletes. By the way, Prantik, after Rahul, if you could take Abhinav a couple more questions because he has to leave. So just to let you know, Rahul, you met, I think, about 30 or 40 athletes as the only Indian corporate who was there. And they were continuously telling you, Navdeep, for example, that he had never won anything. That is why he was aloof. Before he won, he was always this fourth place finisher, and people would discriminate. Can you tell us about that? That as a corporate, when you invest in a sport, how do you kind of do that? I mean, do you invest in the movement? Do you invest in the winner?
Look, you've known me for a while, so winner and loser is part of the game. So I never look at anything in life as winning or losing. It's a long-term game, and you should always look at the value or the impact one move can have. And I mean, my personal experience was, and you were there to share with me during Paris, was very, very humbling. I mean, Abhinav bhai, you've been a medal winner and taking no credit, but these guys have come from so much rejection throughout their life. Uh, I mean, it is just unimaginable, and and they've kind of been rejected so much, sometimes in their own families. And then finally, when they've reached there and when they are getting somebody to come like me or anybody else who's coming to them, they think that there is some need which I will use them for. The trusting ability reduces. I mean, I don't know if I'm touching something which is beyond my uh, brief, but I hope I can explain the feeling that they have gone through. So, and some of the physical problems they have to go through while competing. I mean, and I think they displayed one of the best mental health to me. They were so happy just to be there. Even I think their whole camaraderie between the team was not about winning or losing, but about being there. And I could see it in their eyes. And if this is the environment, if journalists, corporates, or anybody else can make a sportsman feel, is like Boryada just said that, like I made in my business career, I'll make 1,000 decisions. I'll probably get 400 right if I'm a good businessman, right? People will always celebrate my 400, but for athletes, he will never have that 1 minute that we were seeing in archery, that how that 1 second millimeter where the air moves a little more than what was anticipated. It can happen to anybody, to the best in the world. And yes, and I think Amrut mentioned it's, they feel that their relationship with all of us is transactional. And I think that, and I really didn't want this relationship to be transactional. So, it's been a personal investment into this movement of PCI. That's why we personally gone, experienced it myself. And I think it's one of the best investments I've made.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for
If you
doing
could
this
ask
for
Abhinav
India. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Abhinav, the question, I think one was obviously would love to hear your views in Paris. Were there players who sort of reached out? The other is, before you leave, you obviously, as part of the Olympic movement, you interact with so many people from different nations and different walks of life. Any best practices from any particular sporting nation which handles this topic sensitively? Anything for us to learn as an Indian sporting ecosystem?
Well, firstly about Paris, I've been on the working group of the IOC of mental health since its inception, and the Mind Zone in Paris was a great success. It was the first time ever in the history of the Olympics that there was a zone or a space, dedicated space, created for athletes to decompress a little bit, to mentally unwind and relax a little bit. It was frequented by more than 5,000 athletes, at least during the games. The only numbers that I know for the games. I don't know the numbers for the Paralympics, but about 5,000 athletes frequented that space over the course of the couple of weeks. There were many things available there. There was VR meditation available. There was just a wonderful space created where they could just find their peace and calm again, because at an Olympics, life in an Olympic village is a sensory overload, and this was much needed respite for them to just come there and just simply relax a little bit. In terms of services available, there was of course safeguarding officers. There was access to mental health professionals within the village as well. There was a dedicated team of the IOC's safeguarding group, which was there at the village 24 hours a day. There was a mentally fit hotline which has been made available in 70 different languages for athletes to access. And that hotline didn't end during the games, but the hotline is available to athletes for the course of the next 4 years up until LA and so they can access it at any time, because what we know, this hotline was also available, or helpline was also available in Tokyo, and our learning was that athletes tend to access services not during the games so much, because during busy, they have access to their own support staff, but that access kind of dies down right after the games, and that's where the athlete is even more vulnerable during the games. There was also an AI intervention in cyber abuse for athletes, which was also very, very important, and it was something, the number of interventions made for athletes on behalf of athletes was quite a large number, which was very, very surprising as well. Post the Olympics, we've also conducted 2 webinars to try and talk to athletes specifically on the aspect of life right after the Olympics, the post-Olympic blues, etc. So that work is continuously ongoing. The working group on mental health will meet again in December. And then, we only hope to improve our services, improve the space that we created in Paris to a better space in LA, and even before LA there is Milano Cortina coming up, which is the Winter Games. So all those services will also be available there. In terms of best practices, it comes down to a societal understanding of human endeavor, and I think certain countries like the US, Australia has done a lot of good work in the past few years. There's a wonderful document available, and I'm sure you should all spare the time to access it, where there was a time where there was a mindset which was setting into Australian sport, which was winning at any cost, and what that showed was an increase in mental health issues and psychological issues. They've really done a lot of work to change their whole concept and approach to elite sport, and now they're approaching sport from the aspect of winning well. So really trying to keep the human well-being element at the heart and center of performance. So a lot of work has been done on a global level, and then I really hope that that understanding and work really continues to be captured by the Indian ecosystem, because each ecosystem will be different. What works in Australia or the US will not work in India. We have to understand the cultural differences. We have to understand the background of athletes. There's so many different elements to it. We have to understand what a coach athlete relationship is in India, what it is in the West. It's a totally different dynamic altogether. So really, using best practices as a framework, but really trying to customize your own resources into something which will work for your athletes. That I think is critical.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. Really, really wonderful having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Priyanka, I'm just going to head to you. Abhinav spoke about advocacy. You've worked with various teams since Rio, and then Tokyo, and then now in Paris. Have you seen a change in advocacy of mental health from SAI, from the ministries, from governments? Your take on how is advocacy of mental health sort of evolved?
I would say that, compared to, Rio to now, I think there's been a lot of emphasis, maybe post-COVID, there's been a lot of importance that has been given to mental health. And of course, even if you look at the financial budget, the funding for the mental health has increased. I would say that even in the athletes, somewhere there is this awareness that, what, we really have somebody that we could really reach out to. And I think that, teams have also realized, I think that players have realized, coaches have realized that unless, we create, like Abhinav mentioned about the safe space, unless we really create that kind of an environment, high performance is not really possible, because we can't really go out there and win, especially when we are struggling with a lot of pressure ourselves. So I see that change is there, but of course we still have a long way to go in implementing it at every level, because like I said, very limited awareness is also there, but they also know that the way to move forward is with sensitivity and building up, the mental skills.
Nice. Rahul, I'm going to come to you. We've spoken about Olympic, Paralympics, you were there, but also, you're involved in franchise sports. What's the sort of environment there? Where does the responsibility lie? It's with the hosts, the organizers, or with the specific clubs and franchises? Your take on how is it similar or different in club or franchise-based sports?
It should be the same. I mean, the demands from the athletes or their needs will not change if they're working or if they're playing under franchise cricket, because whether we like it or not, government, I mean, there is playing for the country and then there is playing for clubs and franchises. So the responsibility of creating the environment pretty much lies on the owners. And I think this is where we'll probably see a sea change, because I think private sector is more attuned to handle this. And I hope private sector makes those kind of investment. At Shachi Sports, we've already, tied up with our SMC partner, and, their people, their physios, their mental coaches are already working. We've also built it a part of our curriculum through our athlete program. So I think it lies on the ownership. Of course, the whole management, the coaches, the whole support staff have also to maintain that. And I think a larger issue lies with the fans. They also have to understand what we are talking about. That, they can have a bad day and you can have a bad match and you can lose an easy win or something different. So I think the mental pressure will only reduce when expectations are managed. As an owner, I have always felt that playing the right format and the right spirit of the game is more critical, so that after every match, nobody can question your intent, and you can have a bad day. So I think the fans also should be reasonable. We love the passion. That's why we are all in it. But I think we have to be reasonable in expectations.
Prantik,
Fantastic point. Absolutely, Boria, go ahead.
From there and go to. By the way, Rahul joined us from Australia, so we need to let him go because it's pretty late in Australia.
It's not that late, but Aussies eat their dinner early.
Yeah, so we let you go, but thank you very much, Rahul, for joining us, and I'll take that.
Thank you. Lovely being here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.
Bye.
I'll go to Amrut on that, and this points that Rahul made about fans, Amrut and Priyanka. I'll give you the Anwar Ali case in India. The moment East Bengal lost a game, Anwar's mother was dragged in and people started abusing the family. We did shows on RevSportz saying that, and language which is, you can't use this language on a show. Where is the line? Unfortunately, in India, social media passes unnoticed without any mediation, and people throw abuse and hurl abuse to people and family. And when you then think what impact it can have on someone's mental health, you dread that. By the way, I've gone through this. When I was unfairly targeted based on a cricketer's lies, which are now all exposed, my mother was dragged in. My late father was called a bastard. My 8-year-old, now 10-year-old daughter was called names and told that your life is finished because you've been born to this man. And there are 100,000 tweets a day of abuse. What does one do? Do we have any recourse? Amrut first and Priyanka, when I go back to those days myself, honest to God, I wanted to take my life on 5th of May 2022, and I'm a strong person. And I saw my daughter and I said, what the hell am I doing? If I do this, then I let her down. But is there anything that one can legally do, Amrut? And Priyanka, how does one deal with unfettered, unfiltered abuse that has become this toxicity that is part of our lives now? Amrut first.
So I think, look, when you go straight to the law, right? I mean, obviously on the books there are a bunch of statutory provisions that anybody can invoke, and you can ask for protective measures as well. And of course, there are two aspects to this. One is there is a criminal enforcement framework which everybody is subject to under Indian law as well, right? But the question is, where would fan abuse rank in terms of priority for an already overstretched policing mechanism in India? And so that's where we've got to be a little realistic that that's possibly not going to be sufficient, especially in a severely under-resourced country like India. But what you've raised as an issue, which is basically cyber abuse or cyber violence, is not just an issue that is confined to sport. It is a societal issue that also manifests in sport as well, right? So clearly, this is a larger this is a larger issue that needs to be addressed from an education standpoint, from a mental health standpoint as well, to enable persons who are victims of such cyber violence to have some kind of recourse. And I think Abhinav briefly touched upon it. There is a cyber violence protection framework which has actually been talked about and built into the mental health action plan as well. So there is a recognition, that fan abuse cannot go undetected or unchecked. But these are mechanisms that will need to evolve. It can't just be, you can't obviously only use the criminal law enforcement system, because that's possibly you're fighting a losing battle, at least in my personal view there. But I think more of a preventive mechanism, even from a legal framework, having owners who are, who recognize that, teams and individuals can have bad days, right? Similarly, how do you treat your losers? You brought out that point. How do you treat the fourth place finish? I mean, how do you treat a person who's finished in fourth place? Do you abuse them or do you encourage them, right? And that is a larger societal, issue that needs to be addressed on multiple fronts.
Priyanka, your thoughts?
I think first thing I want to talk to, I would like to tell Mr. Boria is that he fought back. I just want to build in that sentence that he did fight back. And I think what happens is, especially when it comes to fan abuses, and sometimes what happens is that innocent people are also pulled into things where they're not really responsible. So sometimes, because the grief is so much, when something painful happens, and let's say that we haven't done it, or even if we have done it, sometimes what happens is that, because you've been blamed so much for it, certain times what happens is people may feel suicidal because of that, because of the blame that ends up happening, and that could be because of the coping of that particular situation. Yeah. Having said that, yes, like Amrit said, that there is no real check when it comes to fan abuses, and also on social media, you don't really have faces to these people who are actually commenting, who are writing things to people. So I think it's very important for us to protect ourselves, even for the athletes, because I think that's something that we really work on as psychologists with the athletes, that we take feedback only from the people who really mean a lot to us. We are not going to take feedback from everybody, because if we are going to take feedback from everybody, then we are constantly like, there's something like somebody is saying this bowling action is not good. Somebody is saying you're, not playing well, you're not running well, etc. How much of that feedback will you keep taking? We will only consider the feedback from people who really mean a lot to us. And this was something that I learned from this one famous person who's known as Brené Brown. She actually advocates this. And that is something that we started using it, here also, in terms of whose feedback are you going to take? Who's the most important for you? So basically, she actually makes a statement that unless you are on the field, facing the people, you're not really going to know what we're actually going through. So basically, unless you come to the field, you don't give us feedback. So that's something that's very, very helpful. Otherwise, it becomes very toxic.
Very good point about just that empathy driven. All right, we're sort of, close to the end part of the show. And just one quick closing comment. When everyone was talking, I was thinking about, Simone Biles. She had obviously a legend, but she also had the courage and she also had the opportunity to sort of rise up to the occasion and say, look, it's okay not to be okay. I don't feel okay and I'm going to take a break. Moria, I'll start with you. Your closing comments. What does India need to do for us to have that environment for our own Simone Biles, for our Deepika Kumars, for our Sindhus like you cited? What do we need to do? One or two suggestions, closing quick comments from each of you. I'll start with Moria.
First thing is, you mentioned Simone Biles. When Manu Bhaker said the same in Tokyo, she got abused. Simone Biles was celebrated. That is India. So when Simone Biles says something, it is important. When Manu Bhaker says the same thing, it is not relevant. And now when Manu Bhaker is a double medalist, whatever she says becomes important. Again, shows you the straight transactional discourse that Abhinav was mentioning here. What can we do? First and foremost, talk about these things much more in the public domain, like this webinar. Do this. I want to see how many media platforms even want to talk about mental health openly and encourage athletes to talk about things openly. I mean, come on. You are not going to, vulnerabilities need to be spoken about. People, unfortunately, in India don't want to show anyone that you are vulnerable. But the problem is everyone is. You are, I am, Amrut is, Priyanka is, Abhinav was, right? And I think that is the start. Each one of us can tangibly contribute to that start in his or her own domain. I'm glad that 6 stakeholders from 6 different standpoints came to this webinar, including an Olympic gold medalist, someone with a $1 million investment in sport, someone with psychology, who does sports psychology, who does sports law at the highest level, a sports marketer come digital entrepreneur, and someone who does media. This is the kind of interactive dialogue that sports lacked for the longest time. I would say we are still way behind, but at least the start is being made.
Fantastic. Amrut, your thoughts?
I think I echo what Priyanka and Boria have said. So one, of course, is to make sure that there is a self-protection framework that athletes are equipped with. Because as she rightly said, whose feedback matters. And so if you filter out a lot of the noise, you can't be doing too bad if you do that. So that's one. 2 is at the same point in time, give them all the tools that Abhinav spoke about in the mental health zone that was there during the Olympics and the Paralympics, recognizing the fact that it doesn't stop only during the time of the games, but as he rightly said, there's a helpline that is available and that goes on until LA 2028 and beyond as well. So educate athletes, educate federations, educate stakeholders that there are these tools that are available and make it available to athletes. So so I think just by doing that, you will probably be broadening the discourse as well, because when sports persons speak up about mental health issues, remember that they're also reaching a much larger section of the society than any of us would be able to do so in our own walks of life, given the fact that they have a unique relationship with society, right? So I think it's a combination of all of this: infrastructure, education, and as Boria said, a constant dialogue on this particular issue that can help in. It can really help in making India go a long way to tackle mental health issues, not just in sport, but overall across various walks of life as well.
Priyanka, your final suggestions?
Yeah, I would say that, there are a few things that really made a lot of sense through the conversation. Few things that I'm taking back, of course, in the suggestions would be that the heart of the performance is always going to be well-being. So it can't be pressure. That's something that Abhinav spoke about. And I think the suggestion again is like the way we celebrate the victory, like Mr. Boria said, it's important to celebrate and embrace ourselves through our failures. That's also another important takeaway for everybody. And apart from that, it's also very important that we really empower ourselves and take charge of our life. Be it for athletes, the stakeholders, the coaches, every single person. I think our life is given because it's really a beautiful gift. So I think it's important that we take care of it every single day. And what we do with our thoughts, our emotions, how we spend our time, what we focus on becomes very, very important because it helps us in protecting ourselves. So I would say that, the stigma is going to be there when it comes to mental health, but also there is a way around it. Yeah, of course, we have to create safe spaces, but within ourselves, we have to also create safe spaces in terms of what we engage in. So that is something that I would close.
What a fantastic dialogue for an hour. As Boria rightly said, we had 6 eminent guests from different walks of life talking about probably the most important topic in our world today. And as Amrut, you said, not just in sports, but across. On World Mental Health Day, I would like to wish all of you that, like many of us said, that it's okay not to be okay. Hopefully, you go and check on a loved one, on a colleague, and ask that hopefully someone is, everyone's doing all right. If they're not, just tell them, just hear them out, and hopefully some of the suggestions made here will come in handy. To me, I think the power of creating that personal safe space and asking yourself whose feedback matters was an important one. As Boria said, it's important to sort of be vulnerable. It's all of us are. It's important to find someone to talk to. Abhinav and Rahul had inspiring examples about what the private sector as well as the IOC are doing to advocate, to educate, and to create those mind zones and safe zones. This is Prantik from RevSportz. Thank you once again for joining us, and have a wonderful and a healthy day ahead. Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, Boria. Thanks, Amrut.
Thank you all.
Thank you.